All right. Good afternoon. My name is Natasha Allen. I'm a white woman with dark hair and orange highlights and glasses. I'm wearing a black shirt and I'm sitting in a home office. I'll be the moderator for today's session titled Beyond Students and Faculty, Building an AI-Ready Campus Through an 11-Week Community of Practice for Staff. Before we begin, I have a few reminders. We have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference. Um, I will post the link in the chat here. If you experience any issues related to conduct, please contact us via email at galeconferencessupport@googlegroups.com. Please make sure your microphone is muted upon arrival. Questions will be answered by the speakers at the end of their presentation. You may use the chat to post your questions at any point during the presentation. Julia and I will monitor the chat for them and ask them at the end during the Q&A portion, or you can raise your hand to ask them yourself if you would prefer to do that instead. Additionally, during the Q&A, please wait until you are invited to unmute before asking your question or making your comment. The session is being recorded and will be shared later, and the session is also currently being live streamed to a YouTube channel. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. So it is now my pleasure to introduce Carla Fribley, Amy Bryant, and Julia Muse to you all today. So Carla Fribley is the Instructional Technologies Director and Seminaries Librarian at Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. Her professional interests include the role of librarians in campus faculty development initiatives, working with first-generation college students, and providing outreach on technology and information literacy. Amy Bryant is the library director at Earlham College. Her professional interests include developing internal and external library collaboration partners, supporting first-generation college students, and exploring the integration of AI in higher education. Julia Muse is the Humanities and Social Sciences librarian at Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. Her role includes course-integrated library instruction, library outreach, and teaching in the LIFT program for first-generation first-year students. Please join me in welcoming Carla, Amy, and Julia.
Thank you, Natasha, for that introduction. My name is Julia Muse, and I will be starting off the presentation today. So I'm going to start by just giving some background for our particular campus context as a setting for the program that we ran. We're from Earlham College, which is a small residential liberal arts college in Richmond, Indiana. We're located just a few miles from the Ohio border in East Central Indiana, and we're a pretty small college. We currently have around 670 undergraduates, as well as a number of graduate students in our seminary program at the Earlham School of Religion. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to give you a foundation for what exactly we're talking about today, I want to start with just a quick zoomed out overview of what we did, the who, what, when, where, and why. So during spring semester 2026, 3 librarians at Earlham, those are us doing this presentation, led a professional development opportunity focused specifically on non-teaching employees. We had over 20 staff members participate. Over the course of 11 weeks, we met 7 times, 6 50-minute classroom sessions, followed by 1 wider community presentation of learning. And we chose to develop this community of practice because we felt that although there had been professional development opportunities on campus about AI for teaching faculty, there had been none that had been focused specifically on staff. Next slide, please. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into what went into our decision to develop this particular community of practice. At the time that this idea came about, Earlham was working on applying to a Lilly Foundation grant through Lilly's Artificial Intelligence in Higher Education initiative. So while writing the grant proposal and doing a needs assessment, the grant writers noticed that while there have been those professional development opportunities about AI designed for teaching faculty and focused on pedagogy, there had not been any focused on staff members thus far. And non-teaching staff members work with a large amount of our college data, college documents, institutional systems. So it seemed imperative that they not be left out of the conversation around AI and the ways it is changing the higher ed landscape. So the library was in a good position to fill this gap, and receiving the Phase 1 planning grant from the Lilly Foundation allowed us to put this idea into practice. So as the idea developed, we settled on a community of practice model. On our campus, we have a tradition also of calling these learning circles. So you might hear us call it a learning circle a few times throughout the presentation. But there were a few reasons for offering a community of practice model. The first being is that we by no means feel like we are the AI experts, and we definitely didn't want to position ourselves as such. So as facilitators, many times we were learning new things about AI right alongside our participants. We also knew that everyone was bringing their own professional lens, and AI might show up in their roles differently, so we didn't want to be prescriptive about it. An admissions counselor, for example, is not going to use AI. AI is not going to show up in their role the same way that someone from IT would, for example. So we wanted to make sure that participants had the room to share applications for AI in their everyday work as they discovered them. So for example, we always started sessions by asking participants to share their AI wins or fails in terms of ways they had experimented with AI that week. And sometimes there were many more fails than wins, but we all got a lot out of hearing exactly what everyone had tried. So once we had developed our plan, we put out a call for participants in early spring semester. And one thing we wanted to make clear was that we were welcoming people with all levels of AI experience, even those that may be more AI hesitant or AI skeptical. So our planned community of practice had 5 learning goals. I'm going to quickly read those off to you now. So by the end of this Learning Circle series, participants will be able to explain how large language AI models work in non-technical language and identify their capabilities and limitations, create effective prompts that incorporate specificity, context, and clear parameters to generate high-quality AI outputs. Thank you. Explore ways that AI tools might enhance productivity, such as email, meeting support, document summarization, and project organization. Learn how to access Earlham-specific AI tools. Identify the ethical and legal considerations for Earlham employees, including managing institutional data, algorithmic bias, and accuracy. Next slide, please. And lastly, participate in a community of practice that supports ongoing experimentation, knowledge sharing, and collective problem solving around AI integration in the workplace. So later in the presentation, Amy is going to explain how we ended up incorporating these learning goals into our assessment of the program. Next slide, please. And so we kicked off our AI Essentials in the Workplace community of practice in early February 2026. We had participants ranging from all across campus, each with different levels of tech comfort and experience with AI. We had people from IT to HR to admissions to the library to career counselors and more. We met 7 times over an 11-week period. Sessions were at 11 a.m. on Mondays and were always followed by a complimentary lunch in the dining hall, which I think helped entice participants and also allowed us to keep the discussion and camaraderie going after the end of class. We also met in a very collaborative classroom space. I would describe it as with round tables, whiteboard walls, and several projectors, which made sharing out among group members easier. So with that broad overview, I'm going to turn it over to Carla to tell you more about our topics, assignments, and in-class activities.
Thanks, Julia. Okay, so now that you have a bit of a sense of how we structured this thing, I'll dive into the content and topics. So on the slide right now, we have a list of the 7 sessions where we met in person with our group of folks. As Julia noted, so we met with them in person 7 times, but that was over an 11-week time period. So we tried to give them a little bit of breathing room in between some of the sessions while also avoiding times that we knew in general would be busy or hard for folks, like spring break or other busy times of the semester. Each of the sessions mapped in some way to our overall learning goals for the program that Julia talked about. So for example, in session 1, how AI works, this was where we were giving everyone a baseline of what AI is and how it works. As Julia noted, participants came into this with very different levels of experience. So some admitted that they've actually never tested out any generative AI tools, at least actively. Whereas others had been using these for a long time in complex ways, professionally and or personally. For session 2, we focused on the art of prompting, so how that can affect the quality of the results that you're getting. But we also made sure to give everyone some understanding of the privacy and data concerns they should be thinking about. So reminder, we were asking them to test out these tools, particularly in a work context. So that meant that they were going to be playing with institutional data. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had an understanding of what are some of the things that they should be watching out for, what are acceptable tools, what kinds of data might they need to be more protective of. So to make sure everyone understood that. In sessions 3 and 4, this was all about application. So we had them testing out the ways generative AI is built into productivity tools like in Microsoft Office, like Outlook or PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. We also introduced to them a specific tool that was being piloted at this time and still running called LibreChat. LibreChat allows you to, or allows an institution to let participants toggle between multiple different AI models to see which ones give better results, all within kind of that protected or more protected institutional space. Session 5, that one was all about thinking through some of the ethics of this type of work. So we considered topics like energy use, privacy, algorithmic bias, AI slop. This allowed folks to kind of voice some of those deepest concerns that they might have around the use of these tools. And Julia hinted at this, but not everyone that joined this loop or joined this group or left this group was like a yay AI super advocate. There were a number of folks that joined it in part because they wanted to feel like they knew more about these tools, but also had deep concerns about how we were potentially integrating these into our workspaces and or our society. So this allowed folks to kind of lift up some of those concerns and work through them. Session 6 and 7, this was all about the final community presentation where they were presenting for 50 minutes to a campus audience. On the downside, this meant that 2 of our 7 sessions, actually, we couldn't introduce anything new, right? Because it was all about this community presentation. But we felt like it was worth it in part because, so a lot of the folks that participated in this were not teachers. They weren't used to standing up in front of a room and presenting to a large audience. So we really wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable at that final community presentation. So we gave them a dry run. Next slide. Okay, so that gives you a sense of just sort of the overall, like how we structured those sessions. But one thing we also did is that this wasn't just a book club. It wasn't a case where we got together to talk about a topic or they read a thing and just we had discussions. We always made sure to give them some homework. So the homework would relate in some way to whatever the topics were from the readings or videos. Next. Maybe, there you go. Okay, so I'll give you some examples here of like some sample things that we had them work on outside of our in-person sessions. Using ideas from our learnprompting.org readings, experiment with revising a prompt for a work task. Next. Experiment with how Copilot Chat is integrated into Microsoft products like Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. Write a summary of your experience. Next. Ask Copilot about your job as a blank at a small liberal arts college and what ways AI might be able to help. Take notes on what surprised you. So this gave them immediate ways to kind of apply what they were reading, reviewing to their work contexts. But one thing we also did is that anytime they were writing something or sharing or reflecting on something, we always had them do this to a discussion forum. So we our learning management system is Moodle. So they had a shared discussion forum where they were posting and talking about these things, which was great because we did see that there was sometimes maybe someone in class would mention something that they read that someone else posted, or sometimes there would be conversation back and forth, but that gave them a chance to kind of share with others what they were thinking. Next slide. So the homework was critical, and then whatever they had done for homework or whatever the focus of the readings or videos were, we would then continue giving them chances to apply that with in-class activities. So I have some sample in-class activities here. Next, please. So here's one sample thing we did in class. Work in groups of 3 to use a generative AI tool to draft an email to a specific audience. We don't want to see the email. We want to see your most successful prompt. Next. So for another one, in small groups, use our sample survey data to create a report with AI that summarizes key findings for event organizers. So in all of these cases, it was often kind of following up on something that they had done or building upon what they had maybe done outside of class or on their own. One design feature we used is that because we had a decent crowd in the room, so it was 20-something people each time we met, which is kind of large, and that's the volume of people where like the quieter folks will kind of drift out and not speak. So we tried to build in lots of small group, or like 2s, 3s, 4s size groups of people to give them chances to talk with each other individually and kind of build that sense of community. Next slide. So I talked about, as we were sort of reflecting on, okay, we think this thing worked. What were some of the things that we did that we think were key design elements to make this a successful program? The first one, homework that applies to their jobs. I've hinted at this a little bit, but giving them that space to actually test out and apply this stuff was really important. In part, and Julia mentioned this, we had a pretty wide ranging group of participants, and all of us being from the library, we felt a little insecure about trying to guess like what an admissions counselor might want to do with this, or somebody, the athletics office manager. So telling them, you're the expert, you test these things out, and then like share what you found, made for such richer conversations in class, and was like, we never would have been able to guess some of the things that they wanted to do with these tools. A second design element was that final community presentation. So this gave them some real stakes to what they were learning. It wasn't going to be just something where they talked about something for 11 weeks and then that was it. They were in charge of sharing that out. So as facilitators, we knew that pedagogically that would kind of get them to like retain and process the information at like more of an in-depth level. But it also like allowed us to spread the learning beyond just our group of 20-something people. So they all drew in colleagues as audience members for that final thing. So it was great because then we were able to share it beyond just our 20-something group of folks. Finally, a part that you really, I think, can't be ignored in this kind of experience is all the things that we did to help build community, but also have those moments of fun and playfulness. AI is a source of anxiety for a lot of folks. So it's anything from like, oh my gosh, am I behind? Like, does everyone else know more about these things than me? Is this going to take my job? What's happening? Like, this is, it can make people feel very anxious. So while not ignoring some of the serious sides of things, we did also try to build in moments of play and community building. So for an example, we had this silly theme that just kept like, we introduced it and then they just ran with it. It was all about squirrels. So a lot of you that are also on these kind of beautiful leafy green campuses, maybe you also care deeply about your squirrels, but Earlham people love to talk about their squirrels and how special they are. They're kind of like the unofficial campus mascot. So for our in-class prompts activity that I mentioned, where they were basically like testing out different prompts to refine an email, we gave them the following scenario. Next slide. Earlham has decided to formalize its relationship with campus squirrels. Your email should be a communication sent to some audience related to this change. For example, an email to prospective squirrel employees, an email to human employees that will now be working alongside squirrel colleagues, or an email to prospective squirrel students regarding NSO, new squirrel orientation. So this is ridiculous, but it did, these were folks who didn't know, this was when we did kind of early on, they didn't really know each other that well. They came from all different parts of our campus, and where some of them were feeling like, oh, I don't really know enough. What am I going to contribute? So this allowed them to like break down some of those barriers and get to know each other better. And I tell you, like they just ran with this as sort of an inside joke for our little community over the course of our time together. So the images I have on this screen of these silly looking AI generated squirrel illustrations were all ones that like we didn't prompt them. They put this in their presentation of their own accord, but just shows a little bit how they kind of we helped build that sense of fun and play over our time together. So that's an idea of some of the content. I am now going to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to talk to you a little bit how we assess this program.
Thank you, Carla. I'm Amy Bryant, and I'm going to review how the program went. I'll start by describing our assessment surveys, then we'll look at some participant comments, and I'll wrap up with some next steps and lessons learned. So before we began the program, we planned an assessment using a matched pair of pre and post surveys. We built the survey by breaking our 5 stated learning outcomes, the ones that Julia mentioned at the beginning, into an 11-item confidence survey rather than a knowledge quiz. We used a self-reported confidence instrument, 11-item survey. Each item scored 0 to 10, and it was administered first on day 1 of the program, and then again at the final session. We chose a confidence self-assessment deliberately for a staff audience ranging from the AI newbies to daily users. We didn't want a skills-based test that might intimidate or scare away some of the participants. Before beginning, we also got feedback on our survey design from our campus Office of Institutional Effectiveness, and we got permission from our campus IRB committee. So here's an example of one of the confidence questions based on one of our learning goals. How confident are you in your ability to select appropriate AI tools for productivity tasks like email, meetings, and document management, with a scale from 0 being not at all confident to 10 indicating very confident? We had 25 participants who took the pre-survey and 24 took the post-survey, and of those we were able to match 19 who took both surveys across both. And here are the headline results from the pre and post-survey results. It showed noticeable improvement in AI confidence. The overall average across all the questions started out in the pre-survey at a 5.0 and ended up at an 8.3 in the post-survey, which was a gain of 3.3 across all of the matched participants. Looking at the individual questions, this is the baseline of where staff confidence stood across all 11 areas before the program began on a 0 to 10 self-reported scale. When averaged across everyone, the confidence scores fell mostly in the middle, with all items between 4 and 6 on the 10-point scale. And when we add in the post-survey data on this screen that you're seeing right now, it's the darker bars that you can see. It is that we can see that every one of the 11 items improved, while the pre-program scores started between 4 to 6. The average post-survey confidence scores all fell in the 7.5 to 9 range. The questions on verifying the accuracy of AI-generated content showed the smallest improvement, but it's still a real gain. The 3 largest gains in confidence were all in areas tied to responsible institutional-specific use of AI. It's the top 3 items on this chart. And if we look at those a little more closely, the top 3 largest gains, as I mentioned, were all about using institutional tools and policies. So the first one, managing institutional data with AI, improved 3.95. Using AI per Earlham policies, 3.84 improvement. And using Earlham-specific AI tools, improved 3.68. We were especially pleased about the fact that the questions about campus policies and tools were the ones that had the highest percentage of improvement because of the nature of the program. Helping staff employees deal with sensitive data across campus, we really emphasized these topics to ensure that people knew how to use the campus tools and use them in alignment with campus data protection and policy. So far, all the data we've looked at has been group average data, but I'm now going to show another view. When we looked at individual responses, we saw a much more nuanced picture. Here is the individual starting confidence self-assessment scores for all 19 participants. While the average data showed that the group as a whole was mostly in the middle, here the data shows that in reality, we had over a 6-point range on a 10-point scale for confidence with AI, from little over a 1 at the bottom of the scale up to an 8 at the top of the scale. This shows the variability of the group, with those who reported they had never interacted with AI before, to those who are already using it regularly in their workflow, and with many in between, with roughly half of the group below the median scores. When we compare the starting pre-survey results of the individuals to the post-survey results, some interesting trends emerged. Once again, as with the earlier slide, the post-survey results are the darker bars that are on the screen. First, every one of the 19 matched participants improved. No one regressed and no one stayed flat. And another pattern is clear. The participants who started with the lower baseline confidence tended to show the largest AI confidence gains. 4 people gained 5 points or more, all starting at or below the group median, and our largest single gain was a 1.2 to a 7.0, or a 5.8 point jump in confidence. At the top of the pre-survey confidence, someone starting at around 8.1 only had room to gain 0.7 before hitting pretty near the end of the scale. We attribute this partly to a ceiling effect, but we're also overall generally encouraged by the fact that the employees who we felt most needed this type of support, who were the least confident, were the ones who it helped the most to gain that confidence. We also asked some open-ended questions on the survey to go along with the quantitative information to get some qualitative information as well. And so several commented on how glad they were to have programming like this offered for staff employees. One quote, "It was a huge joy to be offered a chance to participate in one of these learning circles. I'm glad for the opportunity to extend one beyond teaching faculty presented itself." Let me read that again. "I'm glad the opportunity to extend one beyond faculty presented itself." Another comment, "Being staff, I rarely get to participate in this type of cooperative learning." Many comments were also about how they appreciated learning how to get started in using AI tools. Quote, "I am so glad I was able to get a taste of AI through these hands-on work assignments. There is just so much to learn, but now I have a vocabulary to start the conversation." And another common theme that Carla has mentioned in her section was about how people commented about how much they enjoyed the group work and having discussions with others on campus. Quote, "My favorite parts were the communal sharing of different ways to use the tools and different perspectives on the fears and concerns about the use of AI," end quote. So 3 takeaways for anyone else who may be designing similar assessments. One, our recommendation would be to map survey questions to learning outcomes. 2, it would be to consider self-reported confidence for a measure of AI training rather than a skills assessment. And 3 would be to plan ahead, have a pre-survey before you begin with matched post questions at the end of the program, and look at individual gains rather than group averages to get a more nuanced picture of results. So what's next? We're currently planning to repeat this staff learning community next spring semester. We may do some light tweaking. For example, we may spread out some of the more in-depth topics such as ethics across to multiple sessions. We've also had requests to split the program into an advanced group and a more beginning group, but we're not sure about all of these design questions yet. We felt there was value in having people of various confidence levels in the same room having discussions together. We have time to worry about that before next year. Our reflections as librarian organizers of this program, we are all instruction librarians, and we have a history of leading workshops for students and for faculty, but we learned a lot about preparing and running a program for staff. As librarians with experience in thinking about pedagogy and leading discussions around complicated issues regarding information literacy and information ethics, we had many transferable skills to help make this a successful experience for us all, even though we're not experts in AI or in the workflows of our colleagues across the campus. Running this program forced us also to brush up on our own AI confidence and skills. We used AI to assist us with several aspects of the program, such as planning the in-class activities and the presentations. However, we also discovered the limits of asking an LLM to help us in finding appropriate tutorials and videos and readings, and instead had to fall back on our own traditional research skills to find appropriate homework and readings. We benefited from meeting with colleagues from across the campus and learning more about their work and their concerns and hopes regarding AI in the campus workplace. I'm really looking forward to more conversations with campus colleagues about AI. So that concludes our formal presentation. We're going to turn it to the Q&A portion. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask us about after the presentation, you can reach out to us at library@earlham.edu, the email address that'll go to all of us. And now I'm going to see if Julia has any questions from the Q&A or the chat for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's one question right now. If you have any more questions as we look at answering this one, please feel free to go ahead and add those to the Q&A or to the chat. But the question we have now from Karen is, did these sessions focus primarily on generative AI, or did you address the other iterations and evolution of the technology?
Yeah, I can take that. We mostly focused on generative AI. That's pretty much what we did. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything different to say about that?
Yeah, it was mostly generative AI to my mind, just because we focused on those Earlham tools. So we have a campus subscription to like Microsoft Copilot. So a lot of our testing focused there. I know we encourage people to experiment like on their own time. Like I, for example, went off and experimented with Research Rabbit. So I'm sure other people experimented with other non-Gen AI tools, but I believe that was where most of the focus was.
The tool that Carla mentioned, LibreChat, it linked up several different of the generative AI tools, such as Google and ChatGPT and Claude together, and some local models that were developed as well. And those were all generative AI tools. We did have a prompt where if they had a discipline-specific tool that they could write about or talk and share about, but I don't remember if anybody had anything like that. But yeah.
We have another question in the chat from David. Have you considered doing something similar for faculty?
So we have multiple we've had multiple workshops for faculty in multiple styles. We've actually had 2 of these communities of practice or learning circles for faculty already. We had one running at the exact time for faculty. It was much more pedagogically based. The first time around, we did do some more of the hands-on introductory part, but we thought it was important to have something where staff could go, because sometimes they feel intimidated by teaching faculty. So we wanted to make sure that there was a place for them as well.
And I'll add to that we actually had some teaching faculty that snuck into our group
did,
with our
we did.
permission. So yeah, we actually did have a few folks that were on the teaching faculty side that like asked and said, hey, like we had promoted it as being for staff, and they said, hey, is there any chance I could possibly join? And we did let them in. We did kind of ask them to be thoughtful about how they engage and just to be mindful of that, what Amy noted about how sometimes staff can feel intimidated, or that maybe they're not going to be the first ones to jump into conversations in front of their teaching faculty colleagues. But yeah, we had a few folks that did join and they were wonderful.
If anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A box, please.
You can also raise your hand. We'd be glad to
That's
let you
true
ask
too.
your question live too.
Another question, will the slides and any other resources from the actual learning circle be available? So the slides I know definitely are available. I think you can go to the link at the top of the chat.
That's the slides from today. He's asking about the slides from the what we taught with.
Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say, if you send us an email, we could try to send you some stuff. But right now it's all in our learning management system. So we'd have to try to pull some stuff down. And some of the things were more interactive. So they weren't traditional PowerPoint slides, but they were things like, what was that Padlet-like tool that we used, Julia?
Whiteboard.
Whiteboard, yeah. So, but we could potentially, if you send us an email, we can send you some stuff.
Should they send it to the library at earlham.edu?
Yeah,
or
library at earlham.edu.
Yeah, and I know I would personally welcome hearing from if there are other folks in this audience that have like run something similar at their own. Well, it's great if it's simpler too. But yeah, if you run something similar for a similar audience at your institutions or places, I would personally welcome hearing about it.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions. Oh, I see there's another chat. Is that a question? Oh. Looks like you got some good comments.
So in the chat, someone asked someone mentioned that they were doing faculty consultations. Someone else mentioned that they were thinking about doing something similar, but not with staff. Yeah, we definitely noticed. We, as Julia mentioned at the beginning, we were doing a needs assessment on campus as part of this AI grant preparation work. And it was kind of surprising how this came up as a real area of neglect for that so much. We've had like as I mentioned, we'd had 2 learning circles or communities of practice, and probably 4 or 5 other types of workshops for faculty. Small presentations, small discussions, group discussions, panel forums, all about AI, but they were all centered on the teaching faculty side. And so and there had been other things for students as well, through the curriculum and not through the curriculum. And so we realized that in order to, that there was a real gap for the staff side.
Yeah, and I'll add that we didn't really mention this, but I think this is a place where, as has been said many times in this conference, but libraries can play an important role as far as we're a little more neutral territory. So we're not the ones that are setting, I mean, we are influencing in our own ways, like campus AI policy, but like we're not the folks running IT, et cetera. Like, I think there's a real opportunity here for like the position that we have on our campuses, for carving out spaces for people to talk about these things in ways that doesn't feel like they're doing it in front of who makes the rules. So.
Gerald brought up a point about he approached that he was approached by his professional staff association at his institution. And that if you have a group on your campus to perhaps approach them, that's a great idea. It's definitely something that we were wondering about, like who would we check in with? We also similarly have a staff committee on campus, and they do some programming themselves for staff, but it can sometimes be tricky on campuses to know who gives approval for staff training opportunities. In our particular case, we also got it in front of the our cabinet vice president level, all knew about this and all signed off on it. And we made sure that they were well aware of it before the call for participation went out, so that everyone was on board with giving people time off from their work duties in order to participate. And all the vice presidents were telling everyone underneath them to make sure to allow their people that wanted to participate. So having that buy-in from our upper administration was also an important step.
All right, we've got about 3 minutes left. Any last minute comments or questions? Going once. Oh.
Well, thank you all for attending. And as Carla mentioned, we would love to hear if any of you are also doing it, but are too shy to put it in the chat here. That's perfectly fine. Send us an email, because we would love to connect with others who may be doing similar programming. Perhaps we can share curriculum, share activity ideas, share homework ideas, and each improve each other's resources available. So thank you all for attending.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.